Good morning. It is November 30th. It is 9 a.m. We have a full slate of commissioners, our Administrator Keith Johnson and the Clerk of the Board. I will call the meeting to order, and if you'd please rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes for October 26th and November 16th. Is there any additions, corrections, or changes?
Nope.
No.
Okay. With that, we'll move down to office business, vouchers.
All right. We have 2 vouchers today, so I move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $223,684.30 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the Auditor's Office and the County Administrator.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Move for approval of salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll in the total amount of $982,047.05 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the Auditor's Office.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That moves us down to the consent agenda. We have 9 items on the consent agenda today.
Mr. Chairman, we've got a couple of items I'd like to have pulled for separate discussion this morning.
Okay. What items would those be?
I'd like to have discussion on item 1 and item 4, item 5, and they shouldn't take long.
Okay, then I'm looking for consent agenda items 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9. A motion to approve.
Make the motion to approve consent agenda items 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, discussion on 1, 4, and 5. Go ahead, Commissioner Peck.
So item 1, I'm going to have to pull up the resolution. Give me just a moment here. This is the 2022 Bi-County Resolution adopting participant position allocation. And I notice it in the resolution itself. Let me get the right one. First, second, third resolution. It says, whereas for adult and juvenile court and functional family therapy, et cetera, the amount is based upon the annual number of participant positions allocated to each county. But then you go down 2 paragraphs to the resolution where it says, be it resolved. It says that Benton County shall invoice Franklin County monthly for the county's pro rata share of the expenses incurred. So positions allocated and expenses incurred are 2 different things. And I don't think we pay based on the number of allocations that we agree to support. I believe historically we have only paid for the ones we've actually used, which has been most but not always all of the allocation. So I'm just looking for clarification, Keith, as to whether or not it is the actual expenses incurred, and I'm comfortable going forward and approving it as long as we've got this record that our understanding as a board is that it's expenses incurred, not allocated positions.
Yeah, that perhaps could be worded a little more clearly, but that is the intent, is for Franklin County to pay our share of the expenses based on our number of participants.
Okay, well, with that clarification and having on the record, I've got no objection to that one, and
Well, do we need to add a word there, Franklin, with the Franklin County participants? Because that's what we're paying for, correct? Is the participants that we send to Benton County? Just adding Franklin County in front of and participant positions, whereas that would clarify that, would it not?
well, the issue is not about which county, the issue is about whether or not we're paying for allocated spaces or whether we're paying for spaces actually used.
Okay.
The first is a commitment to fund up to a certain number of slots in the program. The latter is actually expenses incurred. So if we were to commit to pay for 12, but we only use 5, I don't want us to pay for 12.
Exactly.
And so I think it's clear, it's on the record now what our understanding of the resolution is, so I don't see it as a problem. I just wanted to have it on the record in case the question came up. That being the case, unless there's objection, I would move for Resolution 2021-271, by-county resolution establishing participant position allocation.
There's been a motion for approval of resolution 2021-271. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's been a motion and a second to approve resolution 2021-271. All in favor, say aye.
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 Next is item 4, 2021-274.
On item 4, I noticed went through a legal review, which resolves my concerns about the form of the document, but this is the communications tower site up near Colotis on the Harder family farm ground, and as I was reading the contract in the ASR, it seemed like we were not only looking to sublease space to T-Mobile to put communications equipment on site and on the tower itself, but I thought I saw a reference in there to a building. And so I'm curious, I can go back to the ASR and clarify this. Just give me a moment.
While you're looking there,
So
Keith.
I have it here. In the
Okay.
background section of this ASR, it says T-Mobile West LLC requests to contract with Franklin County to, quote, construct a communications building within the compound of Franklin County's communications site. Now, big difference between a building and personal equipment, like an equipment storage container or equipment shed. And so my concern and my question is not whether that's an appropriate thing to do. I don't have an issue with that. My concern is I didn't see anything in the contract where the landowner is giving us permission to authorize a third party to build a structure on their land. I don't believe we have
The way
that.
it read to me was that within the confines of the broadcasting antenna, so it could be anywhere in the county, correct?
Well, the building is to house some of their communications equipment. It's not a large building, it's more or less a shed or a shack to.
Would it be on the
But
property?
it would be on the property that we have leased for the Colotis Tower.
Now, how many years have we had this in play? How long has this agreement been in place?
We've had it for quite a long time. I want to say 19 years. I just don't think we've ever authorized a third party to build a structure on someone else's land without the landowner's approval. If this were defined as a temporary structure, not a permanent structure, or a shed or anything else, I don't think it'd be a question, but
Has this wording of this agreement changed over the years, Keith, or is this the same way it's always read?
Well, this would be a new agreement. T-Mobile does not currently have equipment on our tower, so this is a new one.
This is a new agreement.
We have
Okay.
had the Colotis Tower for many years.
Yes. So this isn't the same agreement we've been signing every year, or every time that
No.
the lease is up?
yeah, we have a lease with the landowner for the site.
Yes.
This is an additional lease with us subletting to a third party, T-Mobile. And I think the concept is fine. It improves cell service for people in the community. It brings revenue to the county. I'm good with all that. It's just in the background where it says T-Mobile is asking us to give them permission to construct a communications building on somebody else's land. And if there's anybody from IT that can speak to it, I'd be satisfied if you just said it's not a typical building, it's not a permanent structure, it's something easily removed, it doesn't have a foundation, it's a shed, it's a connex, anything like that would be fine. It's just the idea of building a structure permanent on somebody else's ground without permission.
Liz, are you on the phone?
Yes, Keith, I am. In the Exhibit B-1, it says that it's a concrete slab, and there's a ice canopy with support equipment and a diesel generator. I'm thinking this is more of just a communication type hut. It's not, concrete or block. I don't believe it's a block building, but like you said, I didn't see how it's going to be constructed. It just says it's 12 by 12 or 12 by 20 portion of the land.
Well, I have no problem supporting it as presented, as long as we stipulate that somebody needs to coordinate with the landowner and make sure there's no objection. That would be satisfactory. But I think the moment you pour a concrete slab on somebody else's property, you put in a semi-permanent structure. And if nothing else, as a courtesy, we ought to ask them. But as a legal matter, I don't think we have a lease that lets us build permanent structures on somebody else's land.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Sean.
We'd be glad to take a look at this so we could keep the process rolling. I think if we just continue this 1 week, I believe that usually this would be existing in that the agreement to be able to build within that fenced-in area already probably exists in the other contract, but we'll definitely take a look at that. And if nothing else, that could provide at least a courtesy outreach to the landowner just to make sure that we are all on the same page. And I think Liz is correct in pointing out the type of structure that they usually construct is similar to what we have out by Eltopia by another tower site, where there's a small building that contains their electronic equipment, backup generator, things like that. But that's a good point that we'll certainly assist the board in reviewing if you want to continue the matter for a week, if that doesn't disrupt any of the plans. Liz, is that okay, a 1 week delay continuance for us to review that?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, we'll pull Resolution 2021-274 for next week's meeting. So we'll move down to Resolution 2021-275, Open Space Advisory Committee.
And I just had a question as to whether or not, well, let me start by saying I've looked at the list of people that are to be appointed. They're all fine citizens and have done this for years, and I have no objection to any of them. My question is whether or not we have an obligation to advertise these opportunities, and if we do, did we do that? And that's a question that I have consistently asked for years, just to make sure that we're giving all of our citizens as much opportunity as possible to get engaged in local government. So all I really need to know is yes, we did, or no, we didn't.
I see our assessor coming up.
We did not advertise. It hasn't been required. We did reach out to each individual, and then there is a new member on the board as well.
Okay, and there's no requirement to advertise it?
None whatsoever. It is required that we annually do this. We're supposed to do it like at least before the end of December. When I first came on board, it hadn't been done, so we did one, so we're doing another one now for next year. So,
Okay.
and all of these people have been contacted and willing to continue to serve or serve in a new
Yeah,
capacity.
no, like I said, all that was in the ASR, and they're all great people, and no issue there, just making sure that our citizens all have an opportunity. I think they're supposed to be advertised, but I'll set that aside and we can move forward.
So John, who is the new member?
Ed Schneider.
Ed, okay.
Yeah, and so I've moved for approval of Resolution 2021-275, Open Space Advisory Committee appointments for 2022 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2021-275. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That gets us down to Commissioner Administrator updates. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the past week, obviously the holiday weekend, but spent some time primarily working on making sure that the budget presentation is ready for today, and also trying to get the redistricting committee scheduled for their final meeting. We run some difficult scheduling for holiday-related travel, but I kind of need to briefly go over the proposed dates because of the requirement for a public hearing. Our expectation is that the committee would meet with and bring their final proposals on December the 9th, and that would put it before the board for first approval on the 14th. We would have to have time for a public hearing of the map on the 21st with final approval by this board on the 28th to be able to complete it by the end of the month. Realize that we sometimes try not to hold a meeting during that week between Christmas and New Year's on the 28th, but in order to meet the requirements to have this done by 12:30, that may be required. We could schedule a special meeting if needed, but as of right now, that's our plan, is to do that have it completely finished by the 28th.
Okay. Is that it?
That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Peck?
I didn't ask to speak, but since I've been invited, I'll just say, and I know we're doing updates, but I was referring to Mr. Johnson's comments. I think a special meeting might be more appropriate than tying up staff in the week following the Christmas holiday. Activities this week, obviously it was Thanksgiving, as Mr. Johnson said, not the usual slate of meetings. Most of my involvement this past week has been meeting with the leadership, the new elected leadership of the Washington State Association of Counties, discussing the leadership team going forward and evaluating some opportunities and offers to participate in that leadership team. And locally, been really not a whole lot more than just a couple of conversations and contacts with constituents this week. So a light week for sure.
Commissioner Mullen?
Attended the Pasco Chamber of Commerce Board meeting. Also went out and looked at the completion of the Pasco-Colotis Road. It's nice to see that is finally completed, and some of the areas out there were addressed where we actually had like 3 different accidents, even a death fatality in one of them. That area of the road has been raised, and it was a portion of the road that the sun wasn't hitting, so the ice was always there, but it was a very dangerous location, and they have addressed that, and I would just say good job. Thank you. That is it for my updates.
Last week certified the election. Certification happened Tuesday in the afternoon. I too went out and looked at the Pasco-Colotis Highway. I do like the all-weather road and the wider shoulders. It is pretty smooth ride out there now, so I appreciate that. Thank you for all your hard work out there. So with that, we'll move down to public comment. Is there anybody for public comment? Anybody on the phone?
I don't have anybody on the phone yet.
Anybody in the audience for public comment? Absolutely. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
If you run out of time, we do have a second public comment period.
Thank you. My name is John Rose. This is a public health comment, I guess is what you'd call it. First thing that I'd like you to look at is this graph here, which is the world meter from Ireland. Ireland, I think you have it on top, I hope. Ireland is one of the most vaccinated countries in the world, along with South Korea. You can notice the new cases, the active cases. Right behind that, you can see their deaths on the backside of that. Following it is India, one of the most populous nations in the world. You can see that their new cases are approaching hundreds for 1.2 billion people. And on the backside of that, you can also see their death rate. New cases versus recovered cases, almost again in the hundreds. Then you have South Korea. South Korea, again, being one of the most vaccinated countries in the world. You can see where they stand, where their active cases are, on the backside of that, where their death rate is. Followed by Japan. Japan recently has changed its protocols. It's followed India with basically the same protocol the FLCCC gave. It's ivermectin based, but it's multifactorial. Follow that, you'll see Michigan, one of the most locked down, masked up, vaccine inundated states in the union. You can see where they are today in active cases. On the backside of that, you'll see what their death rate is. Pretty minimal, really, because indeed, once you go through this, you have less death. Followed by South Dakota, never locked down, never masked up unless you want to be, and where they stand. Thank you. Followed by, again, the PDF that you have following that is ivermectin. It's a meta-analysis. It's 97 pages long. I gave it to you in that PDF so that you can pass that along. But that's really the crux of the matter. You'll see down below. It's time sensitive, meaning that you can have more effect by prophylactically treating early versus treating late. Followed by, again, the report out of Johns Hopkins, where they looked at Africa. Africa treated people for a different disease with ivermectin. 31 countries were treated. I believe 16 were not. They looked at that and found out that 28%, bottom line is 28% less death in those countries having had ivermectin in their system, if you will, not taken for COVID, just present for a different reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Nobody on the phone, Keith?
No calls?
Okay, with that, we'll move down to the reconvening the public hearing on 2022 Franklin County budget. Keith, go ahead. It's still open.
Yes, we're still in open session. Tom and Tim, invite you to the desk so you can speak into the microphone. They have prepared a budget highlights worksheet for you to consider. Any changes we've made since last week that are significant?
No, I think the only changes would have been slight because of like an insurance rate percentage from the state, but none other than that. First, I want to thank everybody. It's a team effort for sure. All the department heads, their staff, Keith, the board, especially Maisie and Tim, who really did a lot of the background work on this, the nuts and bolts stuff. A lot of effort from a lot of people. I just want to say thank you again for this year to produce a balanced budget for the board's adoption if they so choose. And once again, we've also prepared a budget highlight sheet just to go over some of the major changes from mostly the prior year. And if we start at the top, basically our budget's increased $3,440,000 over the 2021 adopted budget. And this doesn't take into account that the 2021 adopted budget was increased about $7.5 million because of the CARES Act money that we received. So just from the beginning of one year to the next, it was $3.4 million. 1B, basically, it looks bad, but we're budgeting a $4,330,000 loss because if you take our beginning fund balance of $7.8 million, and then we're transferring $500,000 to reserves, which is a good thing. We end up with the ending fund balance budgeted at 4 million, but historically, our revenues have been over budget by several percent, and our expenditures have been under budget by several percent, so we don't anticipate really the ending fund balance to be different than the beginning fund balance if things are going as towards trends. Commissioner tax decisions. This year, the board decided to lower the road shift by $450,000. They decided not to do the substantial needs of $102,879 from the 1% that they could have taken. And they have also added another year of bank capacity for future hardships if they ever occur.
Tom, can I interrupt you for a quick question? Somebody asked me, if we do not take that bank capacity, is that banked indefinitely, or do we ever lose that?
You know, that would be more of an assessor question.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Continue to be banked.
Thank you, John.
Indefinitely?
Indefinitely, correct.
Unless and until the legislature changes the rules, then they have a propensity to do that, and they've changed the amount over the years that can be banked. So I think it's reasonable to say that it's safe but not guaranteed.
Number two, the major revenues, it's just kind of a memo thing to look at some of our major funding for the county. Property taxes being the number one item, and they're going up from last year by $271,930, and that would be due, I think, most part because of the new construction, which occurs every year. And then the $750,000 road shift also adds to that, so about $11 million in property taxes. The sheet says from prior year it's $762,000, but that's a variance from our preliminary. Really, it's $178,070 less than 2021 property taxes, and that would be due from the road shift reduction.
Tom, question there. On that new construction tax money, that's only on houses that are occupied at this time, correct? The ones that are in building, no?
That would be another deferral to the assessor.
As of the end of July, percentage of completion on all construction, we pick that up. And it's whatever percentage that is as of the end of July of each year.
And that's when it is,
Yeah.
go ahead,
Including newly platted land, the increase because of infrastructure.
gotcha. Okay, so it's assessed at July, every year in July is when you do the new assessment.
New construction.
New
percentage of
construction.
Completion.
Okay,
And so a house that's 50% complete is taxed at 50% of its anticipated assessed value when complete,
Correct.
based on the permit value, right?
Not on permit value, no. Based
Well-
on our assessed value, not permit value.
Correct, I was implying that because the house is only 50% complete, you have to use some sort of a guide to determine what you think it'll be worth when it's complete, and the permit serves as a guide because when the permit is issued, it's based on the value of the finished project. Is that, any of that incorrect?
Incorrect. We don't use the permit value. We actually do an analysis of assessment, not taking into consideration of permit value.
Okay, so how do you do that with a house that's 50% complete?
Would you mind coming to the microphone so that we can hear it on the recording?
So I understand you don't use the permit directly, but I'm
Correct.
curious how you figure the value on a place that's half complete.
Well, you've got the plans that you can look at, so you're going to know the square footage, you're going to know the area where it's at, you're going to know all of those things. And so
Right.
we use a Marshall and Swift system, comparisons, and we plug that in for an analysis. The appraisers actually look at those individually and break those out. So it would be like an appraiser appraising a project that hasn't even started yet, that as to what they think the value would be for a construction loan at a bank or so forth. So it's
Right.
very similar to that.
Okay, very similar to the process that they use in establishing the value for the permit. That's the connection I was drawing, but I get what you're saying.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Some other revenue highlights are sales taxes continue to go up on a good trend. The first three items there are all sales tax related. And even these numbers are basically budgeting 2000 21 numbers, so, and we're on an upward trend, so we feel that these should be conservative still. And they're $1.9 million over the preliminary. The sheet's a little misleading. And then over last year, they're actually $1.7 million over last year's revenues in just this memo section. It doesn't include all the revenues, just these highlighted ones. Again, the jail is continues to stay flat on its revenues. A lot of that may be because of the census due to COVID is less, so we would be receiving less revenue in there from the city of Pasco especially. On some expenditure highlights, salaries and benefits obviously being the most important because of the continued nature and because of the cost. Over last year's $242,758, and over our preliminary budget, it's $591,574, and that would be due mostly to the 6.5 FTEs added, and then there was some regrades that added up to $20-some thousand. Our contingency is much higher than it is for 2021, $440,000 last year, and then $1.925 million for 2022. And the difference in that is a potential amount for negotiated items, salaries and benefits. Nothing's been determined yet. As far as requests from departments, that was almost $2.4 million. Most of it was in miscellaneous items, but there was capital of $380,000. And we did our best to look at our ARPA fund, relief funding from the federal Department of Treasury, and try to defer as much of the items as we could to the one-time monies. And on that note, the board's been good and working with Keith as far as we don't want to fund one-time monies for like payroll items that are going to go out into the future. So we looked at that when we were adopting the budget or going through the budget for adoption, just to make sure that we could continue our salaries and benefits with normal funding and not these one-time events. And then the last item here is just for our miscellaneous fund grand total. You can see it's gone up significantly, and that was because we're creating a new clearings fund, and so it's sort of artificially inflated. Basically, we're putting all our benefits, we're going to pay it out of one fund, so it looks like a new expenditure when in fact we're treating it as an internal service fund, so we have to show it as an actual dollar in and out, but it's as far as yeah, good point, Tim. There's also the $18 million for the ARPA funds that are going to be expended, I think, through 2024. So. But we feel good about the budget, at least for the next couple of years, because we do have some ARPA funding that is deferring, or defraying, I should say, some costs that would normally be picked up by the general fund. But if we continue to see the sales tax trends go up and keep an eye on our expenditures, we feel like that going into the future, the county is looking to be in pretty darn good shape.
So Tom, on the beginning fund balance reserve transfer, 500,000, what does that bring us to a grand total of when it is added?
I think that's going to put us just over $2 million.
And what is the, I guess, the amount we'd like to have in there?
Well, it's 7%, so that would be about $3 million.
Okay. So we're on our way of getting that completed and back into place.
And that's in just pure reserves. Now, when we add all our fund balances up, general fund and the reserves, it's more than the 7%, but we would like to see it at least 7% in just reserves.
In the reserves, yes. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Tom, just to refresh my memory, I remember when we did the resolution establishing a reserve account, if I remember right, 7% was our minimum, right?
Yes.
And we kind of had a target somewhere in the 7 to 12%?
You know, even 15% wouldn't be unusual.
Okay. Well, for what it's worth, I talked to an awful lot of commissioners from other counties, and a lot of them were struggling to have any kind of reserve. So I think we're on a good path, and I think we'll get to 10% eventually. But, yeah, our growth rate here is the envy of a lot of counties right now.
So unless there's other questions, I'd recommend closing the public hearing and entertaining motions for adoption.
Is there anybody from the public? This is a public hearing. Is there any public comment on the budget? Anybody on the phone, Keith?
No.
Hearing none, we will close the public meeting, the open public meeting on the budget, and I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the budget as presented.
There's actually several resolutions. It might be
Several.
cleaner for the record if we go one by one through those. First
Cool.
one would be a motion for adoption of the general fund or current expense budget in the amount of $44,270,000.
So moved.
That's the gray area that, right here.
Okay.
This is what we're working off of right here. That's the one that we sort of approved last meeting.
Okay.
There's been a motion to approve the 2022 adopted budget of $44,270,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the 2022 adopted budget of $44,270,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we'll move down to 1B, current expense, beginning ending fund balance. Correct, Keith? Is that what we're going to do?
Actually, the next one would be a preferred adoption of the miscellaneous fund budget in the amount of $95,800,000, $800,640. Let me restate that, $95,800,640.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. That's at the very bottom, $95,800,640. $95,800,640.
Correct.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the 2022 adopted budget of $95,800,640. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That was a mouthful. All right, so is that it then, Keith?
No, I've got a few more here. The
Okay.
next would be a resolution adopted by the board setting the current expense levy at a 0% increase for 2022.
So move to approve Resolution 2021-280 in the matter of the current expense levy.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the current expense fund. All in favor, say aye.
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 Then the next one would be a similar motion to adopt the increase in the roads levy by 0%.
Okay, move to approve Resolution 2021-281 in the matter of county road levy.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. There's been a motion to approve zero road increase in the road fund, correct?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Do-
I'm looking here, excuse me for just a moment.
I think we got to do the baseline expense changes, salary benefits.
Levy certificate, I have the levy certifications
Levies,
Yeah,
next.
okay.
levy certification for current expense, then the road
Yes.
department.
Okay.
The levy expense for current expense, $10,723,303. The excess levy of $742,680 for the bond.
Okay. Move to approve the levy certification for current expense as just read by the county administrator.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the levy expense read by the administrator. All in favor, say aye.
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 Then the next one, the levy certification for County Road Department in the amount of $3,771,772.
Move to approve the levy certification for the road department as read into the record by the county administrator.
Second.
Been a motion and a second for the road fund read by the administrator. All in favor, say aye.
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 Then the next one is the approval of the road department tax levy, or what we call the road shift, in the amount of $750,000.
Move to approve the 2022 road department tax levy and the letter to the assessor in that regard as briefed by the county administrator.
Second.
Been a motion and a second on the road shift of $750,000. All in favor, say aye.
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 Then I believe the last one is just an authorization letter from the Board of Commissioners to the county assessor, giving him the authority to levy the minimum amount available, allowable by statute, generated from the property tax assessment for the Veterans Assistance Fund, commonly referred to as Soldiers and Sailors Fund, for the 2022 budget year.
Move to approve the 2022 Sailors and Soldiers, also known as Veterans Assistance Fund, property tax letter as presented in our read-aheads and just briefed by the county administrator.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for the Veterans Fund money as the minimum collected. All in favor, say aye.
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 And if I may just briefly poll the assessor and the auditor's office to make sure that I've covered everything that we intended to cover today.
aware of, yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
All right. Thank you.
So everything's been covered on the budget. Okay. With that, we're down to the administration office business. Thank you, gentlemen.
Our pleasure.
Again, great job.
The only additional item is we received a letter from the state's L&I asking us to respond to a complaint of not enforcing mask mandates and social distancing in our commissioner meetings. Don't know if you want to have any discussion of that. I forwarded that email to you yesterday afternoon, so I know you probably haven't had a lot of time to read it or respond to it, but they have asked for a response from us by tomorrow afternoon, so I'm preparing that response.
Well, the response would be that, in my opinion, that the pandemic is over. And when we got stores that aren't even upholding it anymore, Costco, all the stores, or even our President of the United States was caught indoors without a mask on yesterday. So what more do I have to say than that?
It does require us to post a copy of this letter, which we'll post on the bulletin boards in the courthouse. And then I'll draft the response back to them.
So, Mr. Johnson, I think it'd be beneficial for everybody if we had a little bit more clarity on what the response is going to be. We heard from Commissioner Didier as to what his opinion, his view is. I'm not sure that the view of one commissioner constitutes the county's response, so I'd like to hear from the other board member, and I certainly will add my comments as well.
I believe we posted all the necessary announcements, and that is my comment.
Okay, we received notice from L&I, a couple of weeks ago, addressing the treasurer's office, the auditor's office, and the commissioners' meetings. The response from the county addressed the auditor's office and the treasurer's office, and the majority of this board opted not to respond to the commissioner's office portion of it. And now, as I understand it, L&I is acknowledging that they've received the response from or about the treasurer's office and the auditor's office, and they're giving us a second opportunity to respond with respect to the commissioner's office. And not to put words in anybody's mouth, but I believe what I'm hearing is that the board, the majority of the board continues to believe that no response is their desired path. Am I right?
Well, is this discussion coming out of executive session?
To my recollection, no, but
To mine it is.
But if I've misremembered, then fine, apologies. But we have responded publicly to the state and created a public record in doing so. So let me reference the public record, which frankly I think I was doing, but that's public record, our response to L&I, and that's what the response was. So we're at a position where L&I is offering a second opportunity to respond, and I'm just asking, what is the wish of the majority of the board for our response?
We're a free county. Individual liberty reigns in Franklin County. That's my response.
Well, respectfully, Mr. Chairman, it needs to be a board decision. I'm just looking for any
I'm just giving you my opinion.
I appreciate that. I think we need agreement, consensus from at least two board members on what the response is going to be. That's all I'm looking for.
My response is I believe we've complied with all the necessary announcements and letters regarding the posting of announcements. So.
Is there anything we need to cover on this further?
Well, there is. We still don't have two commissioners signing up to a response to the state, and I think we're obligated to respond. Or not, if that's the preference. I just am looking for any two commissioners to agree on the response so that it's a board response and not an individual one.
I think you got two commissioners in the chamber without a mask on. I think that's response enough. I don't know how much further we can go there.
Are those the words you want the county administrator to respond with?
I gave him the words already. We're
Okay.
a free county. Individual liberty reigns in Franklin County. And that is, we don't suppress anybody on their individual right.
Well, Mr. Chairman, your position is clear. I'm just looking for a second.
I'm in agreement.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Keith, anything else?
That's all the office business I have. It looks like I do have one caller on the phone
Okay.
for public comment, if you're ready to.
Oh, yeah, but before we get off the administrative office business, I would like to add one more thing. I believe that last week we came out of executive session without getting our PA informed consent or explicit direction. So at this time, I'd like to give our prosecuting attorney explicit direction for our PA to resist the motion for change in venue.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Point of order.
If the board has adopted a position and you want to share that with the prosecutor, that's
I'm
entirely
making a
appropriate.
motion, so if
Oh, I'm
there's
sorry, I
no
didn't hear
second.
you say move. I didn't hear a motion, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
here we go. I'll start over for you.
Okay?
Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I move that the Board of Commissioners instruct our prosecuting attorney to resist the motion for change in venue from Franklin County to Thurston County, and that the Superior Court judges elected in Franklin County will make a wise decision. and that the voters of Franklin County elected those Superior Court judges, have faith in them to make the correct decision. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion. There's been a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
There is. I'm deferring in case anyone else wants to speak first. Okay, not seeing anybody. State law doesn't allow this venue to move to Thurston County, and I'm certainly happy to support the motion.
I just didn't want any confusion like we had in the last time, so there's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, with that, Keith, public comment.
Okay.
Can't get him on the phone, Keith? While we're waiting, is there anybody else for public comment? In the,
Hi, Lon, it's Keith Johnson. I'm having
If there is, please come forward.
Connected on the phone, so hold on for just a second.
First of all, I'd like to thank the commissioners for reducing our taxes, or actually not increasing
hear
our
me now?
taxes this year. Thank you so very much.
Okay. Wait for just a moment, please.
Okay.
Sure.
Second of all, the information that I have given you over the last several weeks, basically I'm trying to share with you what I have seen and understand to be basic policy that's helped millions and millions of people throughout the world, and not necessarily us. If you listen to CNN, basically ivermectin is horse paste. Disregarding, of course, the fact that 3.7 billion doses of this medication has been given worldwide. In one of the articles, you have 31 countries in Africa alone. India, 1.2 million people, 1.2 billion people on ivermectin. Japan on ivermectin. In fact, it was created in Japan by a Japanese physician, chemist. I've spent weeks thinking about how I can approach this body and help us save lives. If we follow the money, ivermectin sells for 100 tablets on the open market, not here. 100 tablets for $2.69. When I could buy it here in this community, it would cost you $6.50 to $8 per tablet. Now our physicians are locked down for fear of literally their livelihood. Where does that come from? Pfizer and Merck have now developed their own pills. We call them knockoffs of ivermectin, but basically that's what's going to happen. Estimated cost per pill, $70. I don't know what you see. I know what I see. I see my family, my life, my children, my grandchildren at risk. Whereas we have countries in the world who are leading the way, and what are we doing? Am I the only one that sees this? Can this commission spend a little money, a little time, a little effort, and put our own county health department on the trail of what's happening, actually happening in India and in Japan? Don't take my word for it. Please don't. But have the integrity and the fortitude to reach out and see what's happening in the world that protects these people, that somehow influence the government, Ellen and I, telling you what to do? Give me a break. I didn't spend 20 years in the military putting my life online and those of my companions to face this nonsense. The next sequence that's going to happen in the cycle of human development throughout the centuries, the next step is war. And if you can't see that, I'm sorry. Because if you go back to any literature in history, the confusion, the dissension, the contention that we have between each other over this, and the weakness that we show to the world, war is the next step. I'm just asking you to do something to save our community first and hopefully the communities around us next, and maybe even the whole United States. It has to start somewhere. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Lawanda, I
Yes,
apologize for the delay, but you have the floor for 3 minutes now.
okay. So I understand that you are going to be sending a response to the state health department, something that I've been waiting for a reporter to ask, Dr. Fauci or any health director, and maybe we can ask this of our state health director, if they could please cite the peer-reviewed study that shows that face masks stop the spread of COVID airborne viruses. If we could get a peer-reviewed study cited, that would go a long way, because right now all we have are unconstitutional mandates. There is no science that I can find on the government website that actually cite or show a peer-reviewed study that show face masks stop the spread. So you cannot force people to put something on their body, on their face that cuts off their oxygen, unless you have science behind it. So ask them, please, to cite the study that shows that face masks stop the spread of this virus, or even slow it for that matter, because when I've looked, it's not there. So thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, is there any other business for the good of the county? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.